The Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District is now convened in a regular board meeting on Monday, November 12th, 2018, in the boardroom of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Instructional Support Center located at 10300 Jones Road, Houston, Texas, at 6 p.m. I want to welcome the members of our audience and our television viewers to this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As the Cypress-Fairbanks Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports from the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees and not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted for this meeting as permitted by sections 551.071 through 551.084 of the Texas Government Code. These proceedings are airing live on CFTV Channel 16 and CFTV online on the district website. They will also be rebroadcast throughout the month on Channel 16 and available on video on demand on the website. For the tape to adequately reflect the proceedings, I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that cell phones are turned off or in silent mode. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and for your interest in the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. I'd like to also take this opportunity to recognize our Community Leadership Committee members who are in attendance this evening. And they are Julie Heineman, they're waving, Stacy Anderson, Danica Smithwith, Sarah Silverman, Gilbert Sarabia, and Nancy Franco. Is that, did I get everyone? All right, glad you all are here. Thank you. And we don't have any Boy Scouts signed up for tonight. All right, the invocation for tonight's board meeting will be given by Tim Gold, the lead pastor of Houston First Church of God. Houston First Church has been supporting our campuses by providing volunteers for our first day of school bus buddies program, making sure our kids get off at the right bus stops. They have partnered with Bain Elementary for many years, providing school supplies and mobilizing to fill other needs, including support after Hurricane Harvey. Tim serves on the Church of God State Board, and he and his wife Beth are foster and adoptive parents. Tim, we appreciate you coming tonight and your commitment to our district and the kids. Thank you for being here. Our the AFJROTC cadets will be presenting the colors tonight, and they are from Cypress Woods High School. Cadet Peyton Garcia is carrying the United States flag. Cadet Autumn Jeter is carrying the Texas flag, and the AFJROTC guards are Cadet Nicholas Atidi and Cadet Hunter Hames. Their sponsor is Major Wanda Uring. Ewing. At this time, I'd ask you to please stand for the invocation and for the presentation of the colors and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Lord God, we thank you for this opportunity to meet together this evening. And I thank you, Father, for every student that will be impacted by what happens here in this place tonight. God, we recognize that beyond education, these students have many issues that they are working through and dealing with, homes that desperately have need of you. And we ask, Father, that you would minister in a mighty way to each and every student, each and every family, God. I thank you, Lord, for each and every one that is part of these proceedings tonight. I ask, Father, that you would bless their leadership, that you would help them to recognize, God, the influence that you have given them, or that you would help us all to make a powerful impact in this community through the grace that you have given to us. We thank you, Father, for your presence here in this place. Have your way.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. I will now read the district's vision and mission statement for the benefit of the audience. Our vision statement: learn, empower, achieve, dream. Our mission statement: maximize every student's potential through rigorous and relevant learning experiences, preparing students to be 21st century global leaders. We'll now move to the special recognitions portion of the agenda. The superintendent will make remarks and announcements, including the honors and achievements earned by staff and students in recent weeks.
Thank you, Dr. Ogletree. The Salute to the Stars Gala, held in October and hosted by the Cypher Educational Foundation, generated more than $201,000 for scholarships and staff grants. Out of that, the Cypher Educational Foundation will donate approximately $100,000 to CFISD for staff development programs. The Cypher and Jersey Village High School marching bands represented CFISD at the UIL Marching Band State Championships after being among the 5 selected to advance from the UIL Area 1 Marching Band Contest. Both bands competed in the Class 6A competition at the Dome in San Antonio. CFISD Board of Trustees Vice President Bob Covey was reelected to a 3-year term to the Texas Association of School Boards Board of Directors, representing TASB Region 4, Position F. Both Salyards and Spillane Middle Schools claimed 2 titles at the CFISD Middle School Cross Country Meet. Each won a boys team, and 9 runners from the CFISD qualified for the Cross Country State Championships. In its debut in the largest classification in the state, Bridgeland High School sent 7 runners to the 6A championships, while Cypress Springs and Cypress Woods High School qualified 1 runner at the state meet. I would also add, to let you know that the Bridgeland girls cross-country team finished 7th in the state. Now, just as a reminder, they don't even have a senior class yet. So there's 260 6A schools in the state of Texas, and Bridgeland High School, without a senior class, finished 7th in the state. So that's something definitely to cheer about. The Cypress Ranch High School tennis team, district champions, completed their season as regional finalists following the Region 3 6A team tennis tournament. Cypress Ranch, this is their 2nd year to go that deep. In fact, they made it all the way to the finals of the state tournament last year, so we've got quite a team tennis program there at Cypress Ranch. 3 volleyball playoffs, Cy Fair, Cy Ranch, and Cy Creek, all advanced past the by-district round of the Class 6A playoffs before each saw its season end in the area round. I talked to you earlier about the Bridgeland High School girls cross-country team that placed 7th overall. I got a little ahead on that because it was on my notes here. The CFISD Psychological Services Department was named the 2018 recipient of the Texas Association of School Psychologists Outstanding Delivery of School Psychology Services District Award. Only one school district statewide receives this honor annually, which goes to a district that recognizes and implements best practices or innovative practices of school psychology that align with the National Association of School Psychologists. Thank you, Dr. Ogletree.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. We're now at the board comments section. Any board member may make a comment during this portion of our agenda without prior posting being required. Comment items may not pertain to the character of any student, staff, or board member and may not be discussed or deliberated upon at this meeting. Do we have anyone? All right, Dorsey, get us started.
Thank you, Dr. Ogletree. I just wanted to thank everyone for participating in voting this year. There was a great turnout, and there were many pictures on our Twitter feed with our staff and parents voting, and I think that's really wonderful. And I don't know about anyone else, but I'm really glad that the political ads are done.
Okay. I just finished 5 visits to schools. The first 2 were at Cy Springs with Dr. Henry and at Campbell Middle School with Dr. Perry. Then today I did ALC East with Mr. Godbolt and Lowry Elementary with Ms. Wright and the student council officers who did the tour, and Feast Elementary with Dr. Giroux. All of them were just phenomenal, and it's wonderful to walk through these schools and see these kids actually involved. They're learning. They are. It's amazing the technology that's in every single classroom. It's fun to watch. It's obvious I wouldn't be good now, but it's good that I graduated when I did. I also went last week to Texas State, as I do each semester, to talk to junior education majors at Texas State. Since I went to school there, I go back and visit with them to let them know about school boards and how important it is that teachers know what the school boards are doing. And specifically, when you're going and you are going to be hired by a school district, you need to know what the board is doing and how well they're doing it. I also do a little recruiting, and it's always fun to try to recruit. Then I want to tell you something that happened about 3 weeks ago at the UIL marching contest here at the Berry Center, when I spent the Saturday watching all the bands compete. And there's just not any of them that are not talented and doing wonderful. The directors are fabulous. But one thing stood out to me that I've never seen before, and so kind of like what Mr. Jackson does, I don't have a hat to tip off, don't have much hair, but I'm going to tell you, Cy Woods football team came to the marching contest to support the Cy Woods band marching that day. Fabulous. And to see them cheering on the band was just amazing. And I'm so proud of Cy Woods and doing something like this for the band. And then this last Sunday, I got to go hear The Little Mermaid at Cy Ranch. And I'm going to tell you, that was one presentation that could be on Broadway right now. It was just phenomenal. The little girl that played the mermaid is a junior, so there's amazing what's going to happen next year. But it's been a wonderful, wonderful to see Cy Ranch do so well with their theater department. Thank you.
Thanks. I just wanted to start by saying thank you to my fellow board members that with my job now, I'm not able to do the school visits, the campus visits. It's something I truly miss. I know that I'm getting the full experience teaching kindergarten that our teachers are having. But I just want to say thank you guys for doing that. You don't have to do it. It's not something that's required, and I really appreciate it. And I also want to just give a shout out to our teachers. It's 1 week till Thanksgiving. Elementary people, we got this. It's going to be a week with no recess. It's going to be hard, but we've got this. So shout out, and everybody enjoy their Thanksgiving break. Thanks.
This month is always a very busy month for all the trustees, and I'm no different. Some of the stops, I was privileged again to host a table for Salute to the Stars. It's always a nice way of saying thank you to our principals, but also our spotlight teacher, but also the others that come to the table. We don't get to say thank you as trustees very often in person, and this is an opportunity, and I was happy to do it. I think, Bob, you sat in the dry seats for UIL 3 weeks ago. I was in the wet seats. The rain came and went, and then it stopped, but the metal seats were still wet when I sat on them. So maybe I dried them off for some of what you saw. I was impressed with our marching band contest. There were times in this district where it was remarkable for us to send one school to the state tournament. This year we sent 2 to the state marching contest. And that's with the competition level being enhanced across the different suburban districts with whom we have to compete. So it has changed in a very significant fashion. I want to thank the following schools. My next complement of 4 that in my school visit: Belial with Miss Stacy Carew, Kirk with Aneka Meyer, Watkins with Dr. Jose Martinez, Arnold with Miss Jody White, who taught my daughter in 5th grade, and the impact of that teaching actually shaped the career and one of her 3 degrees, and certainly part of her master's thesis for one of her degrees. So it reminds me that teachers do have a profound impact, even at the elementary level. Something that I was pleased to see is that throughout we had robust usage of our technology. Many of our campuses and this was my 8th visit for this year, had connectivity throughout. Some of our older campuses are like my house. Connectivity kind of comes and goes. I have good spots and I have bad spots. It just says that on major technology rollouts, you don't know what you're going to face until you actually do it. Tonight, I tip my hat to our technology department. This was the largest technology rollout for an academic campus in the history of the United States. Having spent time in that field many years ago, I used to joke that for my budget, I would take the hours I thought it would take and double it, and then add 10%, and I could always make that budget simply because so not only did the technology, was it working in, I would guess, 90% of the cases, but the teachers were using it, and I would say in an aggressive manner, and the students were responding. I think in the coming years we will see the promise of technology raising student attainment being realized in a very meaningful fashion. Compliment to Roy and Linda, but also to you, Mark. From a business standpoint, the key mark of a successful business enterprise is how you focus and enhance your supply chain. Well, for an educational facility, a supply chain is from pre-K to elementary, from elementary to junior high, and junior high to high school. And as I hear the principals talk about their supply chain, not their words but mine, I remain impressed with what this district can do. It's not the stuff, as I continually say, that makes headlines. It just makes things work for the benefit of the students. And that's something that's very impressive about this district. It very quietly goes about the business of delivering quality education from a process-driven perspective that works. And of course, on display at Kirk, at the others, but Kirk in particular, you saw all the different types of different seating and table heights available to our students, and clearly our students needed some of the different ones, whether it was a half rocking chair or a very still chair. You could see with the way the students sat and the way they moved that they found where they were comfortable, whether it was at a low table or a taller table. It enhanced engagement. And then, of course, the room that had augmented reality and virtual reality, it was the case of makers' spaces on steroids. Very impressive. And of course, over at Watkins, you don't have a successful program at Cy Lakes where we offer our second cohort of students to get an associate's degree in 2 years unless they come from the feeder middle school with a strong foundation. And the supply chain is very much in evidence, as well as the quality throughout. I joined with some of my other colleagues, but also 2 of our representatives, Schofield and Bohawk, on School Priority Day. A number of the CLC members were there as well. And what you saw over at Cy Lakes with the second cohort class for our 2-year program, college program that they'll graduate from before they receive their high school degree, was very impressive. So once again, Cabinet, y'all are doing great things. You may not really read about it in the newspaper, although, Mark, I think you had something. But very, very special. I also had the opportunity and privilege to participate once again this year at a veterans program in my neighborhood, both at Lowry and at Feast. And to all the veterans in the audience and in viewing stands, we are permitted to educate our children because you chose to serve. And we never forget that. And I always remember it. There's other things on my list, but I think I've used up my time allotment plus some for next month. So I'll close with that. But thank you.
It has been a busy month. Since the last board meeting, I had the occasion to visit Langham Creek, Jersey Village, Spillane, and Sampson schools. And when I was at the high schools, I concentrated on visiting our CTE classrooms. And one of the things I love about our district is that we recognize that not all of our students are college bound. And the classes that are offered through Career and Technology for our students are just amazing. And I look back and I've said time and again how I wish there would have been a culinary arts class when I was in high school, because that by no means compares with the old home ec classes I took many moons ago. But we offer so many programs for our students, and I really believe that our Career and Technology is just one of many strengths of this district. I also participated in the School Priority Day back on October the 25th, and that was such a great occasion to showcase our great district and our high schools to visitors. I know throughout the day, what I heard very often was, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea we offered all these things to our high school students." And in my group, I was at Cypress Falls, and Becky Denton just pulled out all the stops for us that day. It was tremendous. And State Representative Dwayne Bohawk was in my group, and he just could not say enough great things about the leadership of Dr. Henry and our school district. I'm looking forward to attending Spillane's Veterans Day celebration in the morning. When I visited there, I got a little preview of the band preparing for their celebration, and it promises to be a great morning. And then finally, like Mr. Covey, I attended this past weekend The Little Mermaid, which was Cypress Ranch's theater production. And all I could say was wow and wow again. I mean, I agree, Bob. I felt like I was in New York City on Broadway seeing this musical. The talent of our students, the leadership of Miss Bradford, and all the other teachers who support her in that endeavor. It was just amazing. Yeah, I just cannot find, as I told her in an email, there are not enough adjectives in my vocabulary to describe how great the performance was. It was truly a great evening, and just one of so many things that we do so great in Cy-Fair ISD. And I'll close with wishing all of our staff and students and our community a happy and blessed Thanksgiving. And it really is, I feel really blessed and feel like it is really a privilege to serve on this school board and with my great colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. I had the privilege on our School Priority Day of being in the group that went to Cypress Springs High School, and I want to congratulate and give a shout out to Dr. Henry and the awesome staff at Cypress Springs. We too, in our group, were mesmerized with the learning opportunities that are provided there, and the kids being so engaged in all that's being offered, and the staff that is passionate about doing their best for each and every student. So it was a great day on School Priority Day. I was glad to be able to participate with it. I've also attended the awesome high school, Cypress Creek High School, and also Horn Elementary School, as well as Truett. And I'll just say they were all very, very good and stellar educational programs, and we thank God for them. We'll now go to the report section of our agenda. The Community Leadership Committee will provide a report. Oh, citizens, but oh gosh, no wonder. Yeah, thank you all for giving this to me. We do have citizens too. All right, patrons who duly registered under Policy BD Local may address the board regarding matters concerning of concern or interest to the district other than the character of any student, staff, or board member. I'd like to remind the audience that and the viewers that the comments of the speakers reflect their own positions or opinions. The board may not discuss or act upon any matter that is not listed under the action item of our agenda. Therefore, board members may not discuss the comments of the speakers, and please understand that a lack of response from board members does not indicate approval of their comments. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the board. Christine Hartley, our secretary, will be our designated timekeeper. And our first speaker tonight is Carolyn Boardman. Would you please?
My name is Carolyn Boardman, and I have a son who is a senior at Cywoods High School. Exactly 6 years ago, my son was desperately sick and his body shutting down. I was unaware of the life-threatening autoimmune disease that had started attacking his body. Despite taking him to the pediatrician several times in the preceding months, his diagnosis was not picked up in time. He ended up in ICU for 3 days, suffering from diabetic ketoacidosis, also known as DKA, a life-threatening complication of type 1 diabetes, T1D, a condition that comes under the same category as multiple sclerosis, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, celiac, plus many other life-altering autoimmune conditions. T1D requires 24/7 management to stay alive. There is no cure. With me this evening are some of the children who also live with T1D. They are just a few of the over 500 students in Cypress-Fairbanks that live with T1D. Our children face indifference, lack of empathy, misconceptions, stigma, and sadly jokes about their condition. T1D awareness is also extremely low. Statistics show that over 40% of all new diagnoses will be made too late and in DKA. Sadly, for some children and adults, they will not survive their late diagnosis. November is Diabetes Awareness Month. November 14th is World Diabetes Day, a day that celebrates the birth date of Sir Frederick Banting. He identified insulin as the hormone required to regulate blood glucose levels. It is known as one of the greatest medical discoveries of all time. Before his discovery, T1D was a death sentence. I'd like to thank Cypress-FD for today posting about Diabetes Awareness Month. We would like to ask you to acknowledge November as Diabetes Awareness Month annually, to encourage our schools to wear blue on World Diabetes Day, to share the signs and symptoms in school newsletters and on social media. Change ignorance to knowledge. In doing so, that knowledge will save other families the trauma of an ICU hospitalization. The purpose of school is to educate. We know that your board could be instrumental in raising awareness of one of the most common chronic life-threatening medical conditions and the most misunderstood one. 50% of all new diagnoses of T1D are in adults. It does not discriminate. Anyone can be diagnosed. Indirectly, you will also be helping my son and the children you see here today. Because as public perception finally starts to change, we hope that the indifference they face in schools will change too. T1D is exhausting to manage. As families, we can only do so much. We need your help. We are halfway through November. T1D does not wait for Awareness Month. We hope you can act now to make a difference. We offer our knowledge to work with you so that you can make a difference in our children's lives and to the families who are not yet aware T1D will touch their lives. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Borden. Our next speaker will be, I believe this is Carlos Concha.
Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Carlos Concha. I'm here for only one reason: the children, the adult, and the elderly. I'm not here to talk about politics or economy. I'm here to talk sports and health for the community. At one time, I was selected for the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. I was a long-distance runner, the marathon, and my wife was four-time Olympian, Seoul, Atlanta, and Sydney. We have a child who is 12 years old, and this is the time to start his training. But where? His middle school does not have a track, and the available tracks are closed after hours. The school claimed that the people destroy the tracks. I understand the tracks are patrimony of the taxpayers. Where do you think the 2000 Olympics in Sydney? Yes. At that time, Mrs. Smith, the principal, gave her permission to train during the day. What an honor, right? At that time, the tracks were open to anyone. I am under the impression that the public schools are owned and operated by and for the community because they are public property. Also in the USA, if it's a public high school, the track will typically be open to the public after normal school hours, since the track is paid by the taxpayer money. Except if the school have activities after hours. Seems that it's not happening. The schools are getting profit from our taxes because they collect money from private clubs or entities that use the tracks for the athletes. But what happened with our athletes? They cannot train because the tracks are locked after hours. Our kids have to jump fences to do their practices. I see them at Cy Fair, Cy Falls, Cy Springs, Cy Woods. Every school where I bring my son, the track is closed. Include the middle schools like Anthony or Watkins. Is that fair to our kids? About a year ago, I talked to someone in one of the meetings, and I was told that the middle school tracks were going to be open to the children, the athletes, the citizens. That is not happening. They have padlocks. They are locked. Ladies and gentlemen, we are running away our potential. We are depriving our children of one of the most essential part of growing up, exercise. As a person who did in sport at Olympic level, I cry when in the country like USA, our tracks are close to our children.
Mr. Concha, you have to wrap up now. Thank you.
I'm sorry. It was only a couple of more lines, but
anyway. Thank you.
I guess the message got across. Thank you very much for your help. Okay.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Richard Morton. Mr. Morton, when the yellow light comes on, you have 30 seconds left. And please wrap up when you see the red light.
President Ogletree, Dr. Henry, members of the board, My name is Richard Martin, and I have been an employee of Cyfair for 31 years. I am speaking on behalf of Cyfair TSTA, NEA. We would like to take this time during American Education Week to thank all of the teachers, paraprofessionals, and educational support staff who dedicate their lives providing our students with the best education they can receive to move them into the future with success in obtaining whatever career choices they make. During American Education Week, on Wednesday, November 14th, is Educational Support Professionals Day. The Cyfair District has the opportunity to say thank you to all the women and men who provide support to our students and teachers from behind the scenes. These are our paraprofessionals and secretaries that provide assistance to our staff, bus mechanics whose greatest task is to make sure our buses and vehicles are operational and safe to transport our students. Bus drivers are the first contact with students each morning and usually the last to see them at night. Our food service staff provide healthy, nutritious meals that provide energy for students to make it through their day. Our custodians provide clean classrooms, cafeterias, restrooms, as well as being called on to do many jobs throughout their day to assist students and staff. The Cyfair Maintenance and Operations Department work together to make our buildings, classrooms, and all facilities up to date, functional, and operational to provide the best teaching and learning environment this district has to offer. And last but not least is our outstanding Cyfair Police Department. They have the awesome responsibility of keeping our students, our teachers, faculty members, and facilities safe for all of us to be able to do our jobs, teach our students, enjoy after-school activities such as sports, concerts, stage performances, with the knowledge that they are there to provide a safe environment for us all. In closing, Cyfair TSTA NEA would like the Cypress-Fairbanks ISD School Board to consider declaring November 14th as Educational Support Professionals Day in conjunction with the American Education Week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Our next speaker, John Rosenthal.
Thank you very much. This is where the yellow light is?
Yes.
I'll try not to go over. I came to this meeting last month and introduced myself to you all as a candidate for Texas State Representative. And now I'm here as your representative-elect for State House District 135. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for voting. I should probably, for those who don't know me, I'm a 55-year-old mechanical engineer who's worked in oil and gas for 25 years. My father was a lifetime educator, and both of his parents were also. And the platform I ran on was led by to be a strong advocate for public education, which is why I'm here. So I'm making a commitment to you all and to you all that that's what I'm going to do. So I want you to know I like to be involved with the board. I'm accessible to you. I will work for you every day, and I will be accessible to you, and I will work for you every day. And public education in Texas needs more attention. I'm really glad to hear we've got other state representatives working with you guys. My House district comprises a large portion of Cypher ISD. So this is near and dear to me. I hope to earn your trust and the votes that I received in this election. And I definitely am going to be committed to helping you all. So that's all for me. I'm John Rosenthal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Our next speaker will be Randy Fulton.
Hello, Board. My name is Randy Fulton. I'm a graduate of Cypress-Fairbanks High School. Carverdale High School existed within the district as the black school during segregation. And I'm not sure of the exact timeline when it was met with the wrecking ball, But I have it on good authority that during that time, the trophies that were part of the school were also unceremoniously discarded. In 1965 and 1966, Cloverdale High School won the Prairie View Interscholastic League 2A state championship basketball for 2 consecutive years under the guidance of Coach Tommy Johnson, a longtime employee in this district. In 2015, the UIL recognized this championship basketball team during the state basketball tournament in Austin, I assume. In the last few years, school districts in Montgomery County representing Willis ISD, Montgomery ISD, and Conroe ISD awarded their football teams, who were the black high schools within those districts, awarded those teams and recognized them at a ceremony with state championship rings for those respective football teams within their district. And so I initiated a communication with Gary Durenberger here in the school district's administrative offices to put forth an initiative to award Cloverdale High School's coach and team with state championship rings in conjunction with the ceremony. And so I just wanted to urge you as board members individually and collectively to work with those individuals at the administrative offices to push this forward with a little bit of urgency. Coach Tommy Johnson is in declining health, and I think this would be a good gesture by the district to recognize this team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Fulton. Thank you, all of our speakers tonight. We really appreciate your addressing board tonight. We're going to go quickly to the report section. The Community Leadership Committee will provide a report on the committee's adopted 86 legislative session priorities.
Dr. Ogletree and board, as Julie Heineman, our chair for the Community Leadership Committee, as she comes forward, I don't think she really needs an introduction. I'll just remind you and our audience that we are using a different process this year with legislative priorities. In the past, the board and the Community Leadership Committee have had one combined adopted priority statements, and we have separated that this year. Under Julie's leadership, I believe this committee has really become very self-directed. They've taken a great deal of initiative to get very engaged and very educated on the issues. And so as a committee, they worked together to develop the legislative priorities that she will share with you this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to Julie and let her explain that document.
Great, thank you. Dr. Ogletree, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Henry, my name is Julie Heineman. I am the current chair of the Community Leadership Committee. We are a committee of the district made up of parents, grandparents, business leaders, and retired folks who share a common belief that having a strong local school district is vital to our economic and social well-being. Our mission is to learn about how local, state, and federal issues impact quality education in Cyfair ISD, to share information with parent, taxpayer, and business groups, enabling them to be more informed and engaged, and finally to communicate with our elected officials, making them aware of the impact of their legislation on our local community. To accomplish this mission, we create legislative priorities every 2 years because the state legislature meets every 2 years. This helps us to focus on what's most important to our community and to clearly communicate with our elected officials. I'd like to share just a little bit about the process we used to develop these legislative priorities because it was a little bit different this time. What we did is we started this summer with a very small group of us members, starting with our legislative priorities from the last legislative session. So we used that as sort of a launch pad. We also reviewed legislative priorities from other school districts, both small, rural, large, urban, and everything in between. We also looked at different advocacy groups, and we tried to pull some of the best of what we saw into our own legislative priorities. Interestingly, what we found was that regardless of whether a school district was small, large, urban, suburban, rural, there's much that we share that we're in alignment with, and we try to really focus on those issues where we feel we can have the greatest impact with our state legislators. So we started this summer with a small group. As we started to build that, we expanded it, included more members into the conversation. We revised again, expanded, eventually ended up working with our full membership. We actually, what you will be seeing tonight is version 14, and we think we're getting very close. I hope so. Okay. So, you know, I have to say before I go much further that I am very grateful for this group of people. We are a very diverse group. We are from one end of the political spectrum to the other, but it's where we are aligned and where we overlap, our passion for public education, where we can have the greatest impact. And I appreciate so much all the hard work and the efforts put in by the members of the CLC. You have a one-page copy of the most current version of our legislative priorities. You'll see there's 4 main areas. There is some duplication and repetition in those, but that's intentional. What we see is that there's several issues that are interwoven between these different categories, so if you see that is intentional. I don't want to read through all the bullet points for you, but I'd like to just share with you a little bit of the why, the thought process behind these different categories. First and foremost has to do with funding. What we see in the community is that there's a great deal of misunderstanding of school funding and how it works. So we want to try to engage and communicate that to our community so they can understand why we're asking for changes at the state level. Many folks don't realize that the funding formulas used to fund our schools were last updated in 1993. Many of the parents of our current students were actually students themselves the last time those funding formulas were updated. And we know that classrooms look very different than they used to. And the expectations put on our students and on our teachers are very different than what they were like when we were in school. So those formulas are long overdue to be updated. We oppose diverting funds, private schools or other organizations through different mechanisms like vouchers, education, savings accounts, different shenanigans is a one word, but different mechanisms for diverting funds away from public schools or to non-educational expenses. Again, what many people didn't realize in the last legislative session, some of the bills that were proposed included the state taking 10% off the top. We are opposed to those types of mechanisms. We do ask that the state increase its cost-sharing levels to reduce the over-reliance on local property taxes. As taxpayers, when we see our tax bills go up, there's an assumption that those extra dollars are being sent to the schools. In reality, that's not the case. In reality, the state actually lowers their state funding into our public schools. So we want to make sure that we share that with our community so that they understand why we are going to our state legislators and asking them to bring that more in balance, that cost sharing between the state and local property taxpayers. The next one having to do with unfunded or mandated programs. What we've also seen in the past is that oftentimes legislation will come out that will require new programs for our schools, but without any funding attached to that. What happens is that then as a school board or as a school district, you have to then cut other areas to pay for those new programs. So we're asking that anything new that comes from the state also comes with funding attached to it. And finally, this is an interesting one. As someone who pays my property taxes, I am grateful and appreciate the optional homestead tax exemption that is provided by the school board. So I thank you for that. That it actually provides true property tax relief for me and for others who pay our property taxes. What is not well known is that because of that property tax relief you offer to us, the state assesses a penalty to the school district and actually cuts the funding that goes to our public schools because the district is not sending its fair share of taxes to the state. In a recent board meeting, the CFO, Stuart Snow, said that cost or those extra funds would total $62 million annually that could go into our classrooms, could go to our teachers, could go to our kids. We are asking that the state legislature eliminate that penalty allow us to retain that tax relief through the optional homestead exemption, but eliminate the penalty to our schools. That was the big one. So the next few categories, the next one talks about preparing students for success. These really focus more on a micro level, at the student level. Specifically, the first one talks about pre-K programs. It's very well known, even at the state legislature level, about how effective full-day pre-K can be. What we've seen in the past is that the state funds those programs in an unreliable and temporary way through grants. We are asking that pre-K funding be provided through the Foundation School Program, which means it would be permanent and it would be more reliable, and therefore a long-term investment could actually be made into pre-K for our schools. The next bullet, I'm still not sure it's worded quite right. We continue to struggle with that, and I've asked Dr. Macias to help me with that, and bless her heart, she's tried, and I'm still not quite sure that we're getting it right. But what we're trying to communicate there is that as parents, we lack confidence and trust in the STAR test. That's just the net of it. We feel that test is not an adequate measurement of our students' progress. We believe that students do need to be tested to ensure that they're learning what they should be learning. We just don't have confidence that test is the right way to do it. We don't know if it's a nationally normed test like the SAT, ACT, or the Iowa test of basic skills like we took when we were kids, or Stanford, or if it's a district test, but there's something other than what is being used now. We feel that one test given on that one day over a 4-hour time period is not an accurate evaluation of our students. So I don't know, somehow we got to get that into one sort of bullet point. We're working on that one. And then permanently adopting individual graduation committees. This is a tool that's been in place on a temporary basis for students who have completed all their graduation requirements but struggle with passing that last big EOC or that big STAR test that they need to graduate. These committees allow them to prove that they understand the content and to earn that graduation credit, but without having to pass that test. So that's been something that's been available to students on a temporary basis. We would like to see that made permanent. The next category has to do with school effectiveness. So this is now more of a macro level. We're looking bigger now at campus or district-wide issues. First and foremost, other than students, the most important people in our schools are teachers. So we would look for our state legislature to fund schools in such a way that we can provide more than adequate compensation, retirement, and benefits so that we can attract and retain the best teachers. We know we have the best teachers. We want to make sure we keep it that way. Safety is going to always be a priority for us in our community. We appreciate that the district and the community through bonds and through budgetary investments have invested so much into school safety. This is not going to go away for our schools, and we want to ask that the state legislature, as they also make this a priority, that they put some funding behind that and that they support our efforts and allow us to make those decisions here locally, but provide funding. For the sake of students and for the assurance of taxpayers, we would like to ensure that all schools receiving public funds are held to equivalent accountability, meaning testing, transparency, financial transparency, governance, and safety standards. If a school is receiving state funds and taxpayer dollars, they should all be held to the same standards as all public schools. And finally, eliminating high-stakes testing and school accountability. Again, this goes back to not just measuring an individual student on the STAR test, but measuring an entire campus. Just as my child shouldn't be given one grade for one test that she took one time, and that's her grade for the whole year, the same shouldn't be for school, for an entire school campus. What many people don't realize, and we're trying to educate the community, is that specifically for grades 3 through 8, those school accountability, those campus accountability ratings are all based on the STAR test, 100%. They take those scores, slice them, dice them, mix them up, put them in an accountability blender, stick it out, mold it into a letter grade, deep fry it, and hand it to the parent and say, look at that, there's your grade. But there's so much more that goes in, that it's much more complex than what is being presented to parents. Plus, we don't get those results until the summertime after the kiddos have already moved on. There's just a lot of that has to do with that accountability system that needs to be fine-tuned and needs to be corrected. Okay, so then finally, local control. So this really kind of wraps it all up. We feel that the people who can make the best decisions for our schools and for our community are the people closest to the community, and that is a locally elected board of trustees. We noticed in the last legislative session that at the state level, there seemed to be a little bit more pulling back for some control more towards Austin, and we would like to see those key decisions in terms of how funds are spent, whether it's teacher compensation or safety, accountability, that be more pushed down to the local level where we would have more confidence as community members. So the next steps are we are going to continue to hopefully fine-tune these, create some tools for our committee members to use to go out and engage the community. We talked today about talking with homeowners associations, Rotary Club, PTOs, booster clubs, anyone who'd be willing to try to better understand these issues. And then we'll also be continuing to build relationships with our elected officials as we gear up to then jump into the session, which starts in January. I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
All right, thank you for that report. Done right.
I don't have any questions, CJ. Y'all did a great job on this, and I wanted to let Representative Rosenthal know that this was on the agenda before we knew you were coming, but we're really glad you're here.
I know, I kept looking.
Thank
Okay,
you.
good. All right.
But y'all are doing a great job. Thank you, and thank you to the rest of you guys on the committee. We really sincerely appreciate all the work you do on behalf of the district. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Yes, Debbie.
I also echo Mr. Ryan's thanks. I think back to the very first Community Legislative Committee meeting we had many years ago, and it's just grown and evolved, and I see some of the faces that were back there at that first meeting as well, and just thank all of your committee, Julie, for their service and their commitment to our students and to our school district, because this committee makes a difference. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Tom?
I have to say, excellent job, well done, but also well spoken. I appreciate your coming to speak to the board tonight. Over the past 7 years, I probably have attended well over 90% of your meetings for two reasons. One, it helps to educate myself. But more than that, I want you and your colleagues to understand that I thoroughly support the entire process. The number of hours you put in is more than just that one meeting. Y'all meet throughout, and you're constantly refining, but you're also constantly reaching out to the community. I am also well aware that you do make a difference. Mothers Against Drunk Testing was actually formed on the concept of the CLC. So the leader of that group, she came and met with key individuals from the CLC. Your impact transcends the community of Cy-Fair, and you actually reach the entire state. Very impressive. This is very excellent, very solid work.
Thank you.
So I appreciate all the thought and time and effort that went into this. So let me ask you a question. You talked about reaching out to the community. Do you plan to contact elected officials in Austin?
Yes, what we're planning on doing, we already have started that process. We've extended to the congratulations and requests to meet with the representatives who were elected, the most recent election. We intend to meet with them here locally before they go to Austin in January, as well as meeting with them and their staff in Austin during the session from January to May.
Thank you. I would also remind you that there are 3 members, 3 trustees on this board that all flowed through the CLC. So service doesn't necessarily always stop just with the CLC. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Julie, for y'all's work in this report. I'm looking forward to the 86 during the legislative session. I usually in Austin at least 4 times, and so but to have you all citizens from our district there, they expect me to be there to argue. I'm so glad that John Rosenthal will be there because we need to collaborate and be partners together to be advocates for what is best for our children. And so I'm hopeful that we'll get this done, and thank all of you who serve on the CLC.
Thank you.
We'll now have the administrative report on the proposed bond study process.
Thank you, Dr. Ogletree, trustees. Teresa and I are going to cover this very quickly, primarily because we know y'all know the routine. You've all been on this board or have served this community for many, many years, but we're coming to you this evening letting you know that we would like to begin the process of putting together a long-range planning committee. And just very quickly, the purpose of that committee is to evaluate input and needs of identified areas around the school district. We've been working on this internally for the past several months, all the way, well, in fact, it's been nearly a year when we started working on this process. We want to develop a consensus for a long-range plan recommendation from this committee and present that long-range plan to the Board of Trustees sometime later on in 2019. The charge is to develop a long-range plan recommendation that considers the educational needs of. One of the things that I'm most proud of in this community is that we're looking out for the needs of students, not just throughout the district, but through students that have certainly different needs in their educational process. We want to work with this group to provide a solution for new facility and transportation needs precipitated by the continuing growth of the Cy-Fair community. We want to provide a solution for facility renovations, security modifications, technology and technology infrastructure needs. Again, going back to what we've talked about many times, one of the things I'm most proud of in CFISD is we're continuing to look at ways to make our more mature communities and more mature facilities have the same equal advantages that our newer facilities have. We want to make sure that through this planning process that we ensure support for a quality education for all students and that it reflects the community values and perception of needs. And as always, and the thing that we're most noted for throughout not only this community but throughout the state is our commitment to fiscal responsibility. The structure of the committee will be the chairmanship. We'll have our community co-chair is Julie Heineman, and our district co-chair, working closely with her through this organization process, will be Teresa Hull. We'll have approximately 50 members. It'll include parents, students, business, community members, and staff, and it will reflect the geographic and demographic diversity of the district as a whole. The parameters are that we're looking to try to meet the needs of the district through the year 2025. That seems like a long time off, but it's really not. It'll be here before you know it. Will be consideration will be given to all needs before establishing priorities, and the evaluation and prioritization of needs will be based on the established charge. We actually know that we have needs just from our internal discussion that are probably much greater than we can meet over the next 5 years when this program would start. But we just have to, as y'all know, you used to do these every 3 years, and now we're trying to do them every 5 to 6 years or so. So with that, I'm going to ask Teresa if she'll just talk about the timeline.
The timeline that we are proposing for the development of this long-range planning study is very similar to the timeline that we followed in 2014. Ms. Blackshear can speak specifically to that timeline, as she was our chairperson during our 2014 bond program. But we received a lot of positive feedback from the members about that process. Although it was a short amount of time, they felt that that was very productive time, that it really did not draw things out for them to have to try to commit long-term to all of the meetings, and it allowed for them to really stay very focused and engaged on those topics. The other thing that we did differently in the 2014 Long-Range Planning Committee was that everyone stayed together. We did not divide into areas of expertise such as technology or growth or safety and security. We really kept the committee together and covered the information on all areas so that all of the committee members could make well-informed decisions when they were prepared to develop that final recommendation. So the timeline that we are proposing at this time is with the board's blessing, if you will. This is not an action item, but making certain you don't have any concerns with this proposal. We would begin the process of inviting long-range planning committee members tomorrow. I've been trying to collect a list of recommendations and have a pretty good list going right now. And as Dr. Henry mentioned, it is a combination of parents, community members, board members, faith-based leaders, students. We had included students in 2014 and felt that that was extremely valuable. We have limited staff on the committee. We have asked a principal from each from each level, high school, middle school, and elementary, to participate, as well as a teacher from each level. So the majority of the committee is non-employees or not, but all of our staff would obviously be available to answer any questions that the committee may have. We would have our first kickoff meeting right after Thanksgiving, and that would really just be an organizational meeting on November the 27th to review the timeline that we are proposing, talk about the charge of the committee and the areas that we're going to focus and discuss, and obviously an opportunity for all the members to introduce themselves and get to know each other. Through December 3rd through January the 15th, we would be conducting approximately 5 or 6 meetings. Before the Christmas holidays, we'll only do 1 meeting per week, but when we return after Christmas in January, we would be having 2 meetings per week during that time period. That is very similar to what we did last time, and again, I think it was very effective. By January 22nd, we're hoping to be able to begin the process of pulling it all together and provide a summary and review of all the areas of need to the committee. And then on the 24th, we would ask Mr. Snow then, based on what we feel the committee would like for us to consider in a proposed recommendation to the board, what the financial impact of that would be. So he would have to start running some numbers to see if there would be any impact or what the impact would be to our tax rate. Then from there, the committee would come back on January the 31st and begin the process of trying to finalize that recommendation and what that would look like. And then on February the 4th, that would be a special called meeting. There would be a presentation to the board at the February 4th board meeting to just kind of line out what the recommendation is. And then we would provide a week for the board to really kind of process that, see if they have any questions, any concerns, and then we would come back on February 11th for the board to make a final determination and decision. If you go to the next slide, you see that between February 12th and 15th, really a short amount of time, but it would be going on throughout the month of February. We would begin the process of developing all the informational materials so that we could educate our community about the recommendation. And then February the 20th through the 3rd, if the board does call for that bond election, then we would be conducting many meetings and going out and educating, and then the bond election would be on May 4th. That is a week earlier based on the calendar, so that is part of the reason why we want to begin this process before the holidays. If you recall, in 2014, we were able to have all of our meetings in January and February, but there's just not enough time in looking at the calendar with the deadline for calling for the election if the board chooses to do that.
Just one added point to that. You can see up there it's a joint election with the county, so we're excited about that opportunity to be able to let the county actually run the election. That
correct.
Will
Thank you.
be of great assistance to us.
Yes, if you'll recall, in 2014, we ran our own election, so that'll be very different this time and much easier for us. So, and I'm sure Jonathan is the most excited about that. So we'll take any questions you may have.
All right, any questions, board members? All right.
Would you explain the reason why you prefer to recommend to the board for consideration to have the bond election in May as opposed to November?
Well, actually, there's only 2 election days that you can have a bond election. You used to could call one at any time, and then they narrowed it down. The legislature narrowed it down to 4 dates that you could have one, and then they narrowed it down to 2. So this is one of the 2 times that the state allows us to. One of the reasons that we like to do them in May is because that gives us a little bit of a head start. And in all honesty, I know Roy Sprague can tell you, with inflation cost, we feel like one of the big things that we did in 2014 that saved this district millions of dollars was doing it in May as opposed to November, when there's a lot of other elections that go out. So we feel like it saves a year of inflation, and we also feel like that people that are really concerned about what goes on in the school district come out and vote during that May. It's a time people are used to voting.
So would May be an easier time to focus on a smaller topic such as a bond election versus a general election in November?
Absolutely. I mean, if we went in, well, just say we were in November of this year, which we were not prepared to do it this November, we would have been on page 3, buried at the bottom of a very long ballot. So this is an election where people can focus on the school district more.
Along that line, Stuart, are we in a rising interest rate environment? Because if we're in a declining or stable interest rate environment, that might mitigate at least some of the financial cost of when we hold the election.
Well, I think am I on? Yeah. Interest rates have increased somewhat over the last 6 weeks or so. We're still at a historically low market. So I see that that would not have a significant impact on the bonds that we sell at that time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Are there any other questions? All right, if not, we're going to take a 5-minute break and we'll be back. We're about to reconvene. All right, the board is now back in session. We'll now go to our agenda items. Non-consensus. The board will consider awarding. Well, first, we need the agenda item 5A. The board will consider approving the minutes of the October 8, 2018 board meeting.
Dr. Ogletree, I move that the board approve the minutes of the October 8, 2018 regular meeting.
Dr.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please raise your right hands. All right. We'll now go to the non-consensus items. The board will consider awarding bids, contracts, and or authorizing purchase orders as recommended in the posted agenda item. Departmental vehicles, mobile video surveillance system for school buses, Power School online enrollment application system for student services, school cash software site license and maintenance fee renewal. 6B, we're going to do either one? Each one, we'll take each one. All right, may I have a motion?
Dr. Ogletree, I move that the board award bids and contracts and or authorize purchase orders as recommended in the posted agenda item.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions? Or yes, Tom?
A couple of quick questions. And this covers this laundry list you read out, correct?
Yes.
So for the mobile video surveillance system for the school buses, is that a safety issue?
I'm sorry, is the purchase of the mobile video surveillance systems a safety issue?
Right.
Most definitely. Currently, we have only a 4-camera system on our buses where 2 cameras are actually focused on the students. And with the increased high-back safety seats, we cannot even see most of the students in the seats. The new systems are adding 4 more cameras that are going to be focused inside the cabin of the bus where we can actually see down into the seats and see the students and see what's actually going on, if there's any bullying taking place, so that we can be proactive and take care of any of those issues. The other thing, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, finish, sir.
In addition, after 2018, on your regular vehicles, a backup camera is required. We're actually installing another backup camera system on 850 buses that will have a camera and a monitor for when our buses are having to back up.
Excellent, excellent. Mark, since this is a school safety item, is the state paying us? Is the state going to cover this cost?
No, sir. That will all be local funds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question.
Yes, Dan.
This will come from our 2014 bond funds, correct?
Is that correct, Bill? This is bond funds. I don't have that in front of me.
Dr. Henry, we're using a combination of 07 and 2014 dollars. We still have a little bit of residual funds left over from our 07 authorization. Cover that.
And then a quick question on the Power School online enrollment. Can that also be used for our after-school program, or is this merely for students attending regular school? Does it extend over to summer school?
I'll answer that one. So it is for students that are registering for, not for the after school or before school, just online registration for our students that are entering K through 12. And I don't think those two systems can talk. The after school program they have a registration system that won't be connected to this one.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, John.
All right, do we have a motion? A second? All right, are we ready to vote? All right, all those in favor, please indicate. All right, it's unanimous. 6B, the board will consider approving the use of job order contracting as the construction delivery method for the 2018 district-wide security project, offering the best value to the district.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the use of job order contracting as the construction delivery method for the 2018 district-wide security project, offering the best value to the district.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions on this agenda item? All right, we're ready to vote. All those in favor? It is unanimous. We'll go to 6C. The board will consider approving construction proposals and contracts paid from bond funds to the recommended contractors and authorize the superintendent or designee to execute all necessary documents related to such contracts as follows. First, the proposal is on the 2018 Cyfair High School, Arnold Middle School, Cyfair Annex renovations. Second, proposal for the 2018 Food Production Center and Windfern Annex renovations. And third is the 2018 district-wide security project.
Mr. President, I move that the board award these construction contracts to the recommended contractors and authorize the superintendent or designee to execute all necessary documents related to such contract.
I second.
All right. Any questions or discussion? Yes, Tom.
I guess the first question would go to Matt. So as it relates to Cyfair High School, Arnold Middle School, the Annex, and Windfern, as well as the Food Production Center, similar to the same questions that I ask whenever we go into a campus. Were any of these impacted by flooding before we spend these dollars by Harvey? Are any of these on the floodplain or floodway?
None of these buildings or these sites are on the 100-year floodplain. The northern, a small portion of the northern part of the Cyfair site is in the 500-year floodplain. None of these buildings flooded during Harvey. We did have some water intrusion to the atrium at Cyfair High School, but we're going to address that by increasing the drainage and redirecting the roof drainage.
So that was not ground infiltration, that was roof infiltration?
Well, the atrium just kind of filled up. So the drainage wasn't sufficient. So we're going to triple the size of the drainage from the atrium, and it should correct the problem.
So at this time, there appears to be no need to mitigate any effects from potential flooding.
There's no need to mitigate any. We are going to increase the size of the detention pond on the Arnold site by about 15 to 20%. We're also doing some paving here, which will increase the size of the underground drainage to the detention pond, which will help the drainage on the site.
Excellent, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
I do have one other question.
All right.
On the 1.4 million district-wide security project, the information is in the board book, but would somebody please, and I don't know who would be the best person to discuss that, I don't know if that's you again, Matt, as to what's contained in this proposal?
For the security, district-wide security upgrades, these are enhancement to some of the recently completed security projects. Some additional card access readers, and also the secure vestibules and access control hardware for some of our support sites.
And are these some of the things, Mark, that Governor Abbott, in his white paper that he had developed on security, were these some of the areas that he highlighted?
Yeah, we're very close to doing we were way ahead of what many of the things the governor had recommended, but those are local dollars that we're using to pay for that, not additional state dollars.
So once again, another 1.4 million being spent for safety and security, that although the state talks about the need for it, there's no funding from the state as of yet.
That's correct, and I would also say the state's way behind Cyfair ISD. We're ahead of them.
Thank you, sir.
All right, are we ready to vote? All those in favor, please indicate. It's unanimous. Item 6D, the board will consider approving and authorizing the superintendent or designee to enter into the miscellaneous professional service contracts related to the following project. And that is 2018 Cyfair High School, Arnold Middle School, and the Cyfair Annex renovations. Yes.
I move that the board approve and authorize the superintendent or designee to enter into the miscellaneous professional service contracts for the listed project up to the recommended amounts.
Dr. Ogletree, I second.
All right, been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussions on this? All right, all in favor? All right, 6E, the board will consider approving the CenterPoint Energy Houston Electric LLC blanket utility easement to provide electrical service for the existing old Matsky Elementary School.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the CenterPoint Energy Houston Electric LLC blanket utility easement required to provide electrical service for our existing Old Matsky Elementary School, and authorize the superintendent or designee to complete and execute the final easement documents upon verification of the as-built installation.
Second.
All right, any questions, discussion? All right, all those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. At 6F, the board will consider approving on second reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies. That's BBD local board members, training and orientation. That's a revised FEA local attendance, compulsory attendance. That is a revised.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve on second reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies, BBD local board members, training and orientation revision, FEA local attendance, compulsory attendance revision.
I second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, discussion? All right, all those in favor, please indicate. It's unanimous. Item 6G, the board will consider approving the district's 2018 comprehensive annual financial report and accept the auditor's report on the district's general purpose financial statements for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2018, and we will have a presentation by.
Thank you, Dr. Ogletree, members of the board, and Dr. Henry. Our presentations on the financial reports regarding the comprehensive report, we'll make that presentation, and it will cover both items G and H, but we would still need action separately on each of those items. Regarding our district's 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report under item G. As you know, the Texas Education Code requires an annual audit of the school district's financial statements, and that the report be approved by the board within 150 days of the end of the fiscal year. Our independent auditors, Weaver and Tidwell, have completed its audit of our financial statements and have issued its independent auditor's report on those financial statements for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2018, as well as its report on our federal financial programs, which is covered under the Single Audit Act of 1984. But before I ask Karen Smith to come and make that presentation on the CAFR for fiscal 2018. I do want to recognize her and thank her, as well as a number of our staff in the financial area, financial department, Mabel Isles, Melissa McInerney, and Annette Pete. They just do a marvelous job, a phenomenal job throughout the course of the year. But as it relates to the CAFR, they prepare this CAFR. It's our report. They work with the independent auditors. They develop the audit schedules, and so the only thing in this report that is not ours is the auditor's report, that 1 or 2 page document that's in the report itself. And as you know, every year this report wins awards from the Government Finance Officers Association, as well as the Association of School Business Officials. So also our auditors are here tonight, Ms. Deborah Kirkham-Young and Greg Peterson with Weaver are here to present their firm's audit opinion and single audit reports. So at this time, I would ask Karen Smith to come forward and make a presentation on the overall general fund year-end financial statements. A PDF copy of the full CAFR is on your computer, and a link on your desktop, as well as the federal single audit report, as well as a printed and bound copy of the CAFR for June 30, 2018. So with that, I will hand it over to Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. President Ogletree, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Henry, as Mr. Snow indicated, we have to have an annual financial audit, but we also have to turn into Texas Education Agency an annual financial report or a comprehensive annual financial report every single year. So before Debbie Kirkham reports on the actual audit results, I'm going to go over our comprehensive annual financial report with you and discuss the district's operating results for June 30, 2018. You will see on this screen that this, which is actually from page 32 of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the results of the district's general fund. This is the main operating fund for the school district, and the district had revenues, total revenues of $904.2 million and total expenditures of $883.9 million, resulting in an addition to fund balance of $22.9 million and an ending fund balance of $450.4 million. I wanted to bring to your attention that what's included in this, it's recorded both in the revenues and in the expenditures. You will see there is $48.2 million that shows it's actually the state's contribution towards TRS. I thought it would be interesting to show you the additions to fund balance for the district over the past 10 years. You will see here over the 10-year period that the district added in excess of $376 million to fund balance. Some of the operating results that are worth highlighting for the district for the 2017-18 school year are an increase of fund balance of $22.9 million when we had originally had an adopted budget with a deficit of $18.2 million. Also, the fund balance resulted in over 6 months' worth of expenditures and fund balance, about 51% of expenditures. The district continues to have a low general administrative cost of 1.8%. This is below the state average of 3%. Also, the district continues to be below the threshold related to the administrative cost ratio for a district of our size. Our administrative cost ratio was 3.8% when the recommended threshold is 8.55%. And as Julie Heineman so eloquently explained to you earlier, when the property values increase, which results in an increase in property taxes, our state aid goes down. This is reflected where our state revenue for the 17-18 fiscal year from state aid was 36% of total revenues, while property tax revenue was 55% of total revenues. Also wanted to go over something that you will see that is a major change in the government-wide financial statements. The district was required to adopt a change in accounting principle this year associated with Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 75. This relates to post-employment benefits other than pensions, so other than TRS. And the district had to record an adjustment to beginning net position in the government-wide financial statements. It was the cumulative effect of this change in accounting principle. Also, the district had to recognize its proportionate share of TRS care, and TRS care is the health insurance for the retirees. But I want to stress that although you will see a negative net position and a negative unreserved portion of balance of net position, that this does not reflect what is actually in the governmental fund financial statements and does not affect fund balance, nor does it affect our ability to meet our financial obligations. So now I will turn it over to Ms. Deborah Kirkham-Young to go over the audit.
Thank you, Karen. In your annual financial report, page 11 of the CAFR is our opinion on the basic financial statements. Again, in 2017-18 fiscal year ending June 30th, the district received an unmodified clean opinion on the financial statements. That's the highest level of assurance that you can receive that the financial statements meet the standards in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That is, all the assets, liabilities, revenues, expenditures are fairly stated in accordance with GAAP, and also that all the notes to the financial statements that are required are included in that report. Also, our audit was conducted in accordance with the auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America, as well as the government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. As Stuart mentioned earlier, besides the CAFR, you also received a separate report, the Federal Single Audit Report. And on page 9 of that particular report is our opinion on the compliance on the major programs. The major programs we tested this year were Title I, Title II, and Title III. And thank goodness to the state, they also put out at the very end of the year the hurricane recovery grants that were significant to the district. In those particular audits of those particular major programs, again, the district received an unmodified clean opinion on those particular major programs. And I just want to add the same thing that Stuart said, my special thanks to Karen, Blake, Stuart, Mabel, Melissa, all of those individuals. You can see that they all strive for excellence in financial reporting. They're not afraid to ask questions and network and brainstorm, and we appreciate all of their efforts very much. Thank you.
Debbie and I are available to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, board members, any questions? Sal?
We first started talking about GASB 75 back in 2015 when it became apparent that it would pass in the summertime. And Dr. Michael Granoff, who many consider to be the preeminent academician when it comes to governmental accounting, had a tongue-in-cheek question that he passed on to me to ask as to the impact. So the impact of GASB 75 should not be a surprise to any of us because we've been talking about it for a few years. But let's talk about how big is that number and where do we find the number in the CAFR to be able to look at it a little more closely.
Well, first of all, the district had to make an adjustment, like I said, a prior period adjustment. That would be
and let me stop you there. What does a prior period adjustment mean?
That is where we had to go through and adjust for all the prior periods, previously issued financial statements, the cumulative effect of this change in accounting principle.
So what you indicated is this new accounting principle says we have to record the liabilities of our share of TRS. Is that correct?
Of our proportionate share of whether, in GASB 75, it's TRS care.
And prior to this year, we never really had to do that.
That is correct.
But for our annual contribution, did we show that in prior years?
Our annual contribution is reflected in our fund financial statements, our governmental fund financial statements.
So we have been making that annual payment all these years, but we were never required to show our pro rata share or allocated liabilities until now.
Until now, correct.
Okay, so how big of a bite of the apple is this?
The prior period adjustment is on page 27 of the comprehensive annual financial report, and that was $621,715,600.
That's a big number.
Yes, it's a big number. However, that was the prior period adjustment, and then you will see that the actual liability that was recorded on page 26 for the district, the net OPEB liability was $354,172,109. And basically, that was adjusted because of changes since the prior actuarial evaluation, and there were several changes that actually had that liability decrease.
What is the actuarial rate that is used in these assumptions?
The rate that's used in these assumptions, well, if you go to, it's actually on page 70, I believe it's on page 71 or 72. On page 70, you will see that the expected contribution to long-term portfolio returns is 8.7, but what's actually utilized is 8% related to the liability.
Now, on page 70, I see alpha of 1% and inflation expectation of 2.2. What does that mean?
Okay, well, number one, the inflation rate is just the inflation rate that was used by the actuaries to come up with what the district, with what the liability would be. The alpha rate, that is a measure of volatility of investments. And you will actually see on page 71, that's under the discount rate. And you will see that the measure, and basically because the dollar amount is so small, what they actually used for the OPEB liability is a municipal bond rate of 3.42%. 8% was utilized for the TRS liability on the pension.
Now, to further confuse and muddy the water, in July of this year, the Houston Chronicle ran a article, but it also showed up in the Tribune. And so I'll quote from the Tribune. The Texas Teacher Retirement System, Austin, lowered the assumed rate of return for the $151.3 billion defined benefit lowering the fund's assumed return rate has been debated by board trustees for a year. It is controversial because lower return rates will require higher contributions from the state, TRS members, and school districts. So by changing the rate of investments from 8% down to the 7.25, will that have an impact when we text year? And then secondly, if it does, should this be included as a subsequent event footnote?
It is possible that it could have an effect. Now, what you've got to take into consideration is sometimes there are other changes that actually affect that liability, such as the district's proportionate share of the liability. But that information is actually essentially disclosed on page 71 because what it shows is the current single, it's not on page 71 because the one you're referring to actually relates to the TRS liability, and that's on, let's see.
65.
It's on page 65, and you will see that it shows the current discount rate of 8%. And then it shows what our liability would be if that rate was 1% higher or 1% lower. So if you look at the 7%, somewhere in between there and the 8% is what the effect would be. However, we report basically a year behind as far as because the TRS plan year is different than our year. And so TRS provides us that information, and there was nothing given to us to show that it would be any reason to put it as subsequent information in the annual audit.
But because we have it covered from a sensitivity analysis perspective, showing a range, we actually have already addressed the possibility that this could have an impact from an actuarial perspective when they run the actuarial analysis next.
That is correct.
Correct.
Good conversation on a difficult topic to cover. Do we anticipate, and we may have some folks in the room who may comment on it as well, other than the three of y'all, will this have an impact on how bond rating agencies analyze our financial statements?
I will let them say, they can later respond to that, but bond rating agencies are aware of this change, just like they were aware of the change that happened with GASB 68. that related to the TRS pension liability. Therefore, I think they know this, and they're taking that into consideration, just like the Texas Education Agency takes that into account when looking at our financial integrity rating. They actually back those numbers out.
You correctly anticipated my next question on that. Let's see. You've already mentioned it once, but I'm going to ask it again because, as I said, this is a massively big number. Why does this not impact our liquidity? I mean, we recognized a prior period adjustment, I think you said, of $600 million. I think you told us that we just put a $300 million liability on our balance sheet. Why does that not impact our liability? Pardon me. Why does that not impact our liquidity?
That's an excellent question. The government-wide financial statements, which are the first two financial statements of the basic financial statements, basically are a cumulative effect of showing all the district's liabilities. And then the fund balance financial statement shows the actual current year operating results, and basically what our expenditures are, what our revenues are, and what the results are for the current year based on what we know now. So the government-wide, as I said, is taking into effect everything as if we owed that money today, which we actually do not.
You know, in the auditor's letter to us, they identify significant accruals and significant estimates. Within the financial statements, one of the items of disclosure, it says 56% of property tax receivables is not scheduled to be collected in the subsequent year. So does that mean of the remaining receivables, we anticipate that a significant portion of that will be deemed uncollectible?
Typically our uncollectible amount is actually very minimal, and we actually have a collection rate of 98%, a little over 98%. Therefore, in which page are you referring to, Mr. Jackson? I want to be sure we're on the same.
It would be the accounts receivable footnote.
Just want to be sure.
And in my notes, I didn't write it down.
That's okay. I just wanted to be sure that I answered your question.
Not only did you answer it, you answered my follow-up question.
Your next one.
Because with disclosure like that, it calls into question what is our actual collection rate. And if we take a look at the effective collection rate in terms of total dollars received net, is that greater because of delinquent fees and interest? Can that be greater than the amount of total receivables?
Yes. Yes, sir.
And do we, in fact, actually have that type of experience in this district?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. A question on the single audit, and this is for Ms. Kirkland. On the auditing report itself, you mentioned that you took a look at Title I, Title II, and Title III, and hurricane grants.
Yes, sir.
Do you rotate what you look at each year?
Yes. Primarily, when you're trying to determine what programs to audit, you have to do a risk analysis. And primarily is you're taking the federal programs, the $99 million, and multiplying that times 3%, determining what your type A programs are. And once you evaluate what your type A programs, they all have to be evaluated in regards to when were they last audited is one of the crucial things. And they have to be all your type A programs have to be audited every third year unless in your risk analysis you came up with some identifying factor that it needed to be audited again this year because maybe of a finding of the prior year. Then also you have to go look at your type B programs, those that fall below that value. And I believe the type A and the type B is on page 9 of that federal schedule of findings and question cost. A type A program was $2,986,000. And so anything below that is those different type B programs that meet a certain criteria. They also have to be evaluated. So just so that they're not lost out, because you could have a program that is of lower value and it might have a higher risk. But being that the Hurricane Recovery Grant was a first year grant, 84.938 CFDA number, it had to be audited in the current year. And actually the compliance supplement didn't even have it included of compliance requirements. So that means every compliance requirement was applicable to it in the audit process.
So by doing this, does that mean that you take a closer look at some of our programs than you would from a materiality standpoint from the overall large audit?
Can you repeat that just to make sure I understood your question?
I presume you conduct your audit with an eye toward materiality. On the general audit, we have very large numbers here. We have a $900 million expense. And materiality on $900 million might be somewhat less than $113 million.
Right.
So in this single audit, does that mean you're taking a little closer look?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're doing a materiality calculation for each one of those individual major programs that are selected. The same as you would do for financial statements for each of the different opinion units, government-wide, general funds, special revenue. Each one of these major funds have their own calculation for materiality.
And for example, when you took a look at Title I, you took a look at the money coming in. Mm-hmm. Did you make certain that we are spending those Title I dollars in the fashion prescribed by the government?
Yes, sir. We're looking at the notice of grant award of what your budgets are, and generally those budgets are broken down not by function codes that you see in the financial report. They're broken down by object codes like salaries, contracted services, supplies, capital outlay. And the district's general ledger is able to break those things down, and we're able to make selections. And primarily the things in your major programs is allowability and allowable costs, reporting and cash management are always some of the most significant compliance requirements. But you're looking at are those costs that were charged to that grant, were they allowable per the budget, and was it also an allowable activity? And so those are the two of the most key items in testing of the grants and testing expenditures. And we say those are non-payroll expenditures, and also testing payroll expenditures that are charged to the grant.
Excellent. Thank you ever so much for a good, comprehensive answer. And also thank you to you as well, Karen. Excellent presentation. I would recommend, I know all of my colleagues have read the management's discussion and analysis of earnings, which is a great highlight, and it was well written. From my perspective, it's scintillating reading. Perhaps not everybody would find it quite so interesting, but I do encourage the viewing audience, if you look at nothing else, at least take a look at those 2 to 3 pages because it does identify all the significant items that happened during the last fiscal year. Thank you, ladies.
All right, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the district's 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report and accept the auditor's report on the district's general purpose financial statements for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2018.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? All right. The next item is the board will consider approving the auditor's report on the district's fiscal year June 30, 28, the required provisions of the Single Audit Act of 1984 as amended by Title II U.S. Code Federal Regulations, CFR Part 200, Uniform Administrative Requirements, Costs, Principles, and Audit Requirements for Federal Awards. Is there a motion?
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the auditor's report on the district's fiscal year ended June 30, 2018, required provisions of the Single Audit Act of 1984 as amended in Title II U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, CFR Part 200, Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles, and Audit Requirements for Federal Awards with uniform guidance.
Second.
All right. Anything further? All right, all those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Item 6I, the board will consider approving budget amendments for the period of July 1 through September 30, 2018.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the budget amendments for the period of July 1, 2018 through September 30th, 2018.
Second.
All right, are there any questions or any need to discuss? All right, all those in favor? It's unanimous. 6J, the board will consider adopting an order authorizing the issuance of Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Unlimited Tax Refunding Bond Series 2019, levying a tax and providing for the security of payment thereof, providing for the award of the sale thereof in accordance with the specified parameters, and enacting other provisions relating thereto.
Mr. President, I move that the board adopt an order authorizing the issuance of Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Unlimited Tax Refunding Bonds, Series 2019, levying a tax and providing for the security of payment thereof, providing for the award of the sale thereof in accordance with specified parameters, and enacting other provisions related thereto.
Second.
All right, any discussion or questions? Yes, Tom.
What's the purpose of this action?
This is a refunding bond that is intended to refund fees from previously issued bonds in order to produce debt service present value and cash flow savings. We have identified a number of bonds that are candidates for refunding that we will be looking at, and it could be anywhere from $80 million to $273 million of bonds, depending upon how we consider those refunding candidates over the next couple of weeks.
And we have routinely done this over the past number of years, isn't that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Each of these maturities have call dates of February 15th of 2019, and we're planning to go into the bond market and price these bonds on January the 17th and deliver the bonds and transfer the funds on February the 20th.
Has there been any discussion in the popular press about the Fed raising interest rates in December of this year?
I'll ask Terrell Palmer to answer that. Terrell Palmer is our financial advisor with Post Oak Municipal Advisors, and as well as want to introduce, as you know, Jonathan Frells with Bracewell and Randy Bates with Bates Coleman. They are our co-bond counsel. So.
Yes, there's been a lot of discussion about increasing interest rates. They have most of the predictors on Wall Street, I think, are believe that the board of chairmen will be increasing that rate by another quarter of a basis points. That's probably already built into the market. I think it would be more of a surprise if they didn't increase interest rates that would probably, send kind of a mixed signal, and everybody would have to readjust. No, I think the board has really provided a lot of indication out there that they will be continuing to increase interest rates on the short end of the yield curve in the near future. We're really not issuing these bonds, unlike your variable rate bonds. We are issuing these bonds that have a relatively long average life, anywhere between 7 to 10 years, and so short end of the yield curve adjustments really do not affect the interest rate on these kinds of bonds. A lot of these bonds are also what they call current refundings, and it wasn't really bonds that we could have advanced refund a year ago when interest rates may have been a little bit lower. 82 million of these bonds can only be refunded right up until their call date of February 15th of 2019, and so that's kind of why we're in this window right now of trying to affect this refunding.
Have we been financially successful in these refundings in the past?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, Stuart and I were just visiting about it. We've been spoiled really by the wonderful savings that the district has achieved over the last 3 or 4 years. We measure a refunding by its success if it can achieve over 4% savings. But during the last several years, we've achieved savings of 10 to 12 to 15% on our refundings. So they've been a great success for the district and its taxpayers. With the increase in interest rates that Stuart had mentioned, our savings has been reduced, but still well above that 4% or so success level or goal that I would have for this district. So yes, we've had a lot of success over the years.
Over the last 6 or 7 years, we've had a number of refundings, and our cumulative savings over that period of time resulting from those refundings is over $317 million.
That is most impressive.
Yes.
I know you can't forecast the future, but do you anticipate that the market will be less eager to acquire our bonds because of our adoption of GASB 75 and the very significant prior period adjustment?
No, it's the law of the land, and if they're going to buy tax-exempt bonds, everyone has got to abide by these new GASB rules. So it's not like it's just Cy-Fair ISD, but all of the school districts and in the state of Texas. So if you want to buy bonds, you would have to adopt. Yeah, you're going to have to agree and know how to review the new GASB standards. So you're not on an island. They're not going to be able to ignore your bonds and go and buy other bonds.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, John.
All right, if there are no further questions, may we have a motion?
I move that the board adopt an order authorizing the issuance of Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Unlimited Tax Refunding Bonds, Series 2019, levying a tax and providing for the security of payment thereof, providing for the award of the sale thereof in accordance with specified parameters, and enacting other provisions relating thereto.
Okay, Tom, I was just told that Dorsey had already made that. Don made the motion, so we have a double motion. All right, you all ready to vote? Let's vote. All those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. We'll now have our superintendent's briefing.
Thank you, Dr. Ogletree. More than 3,000 guests visited the 5th annual CFISD Health Expo benefiting the Health Organization of Physical Educators on October 13th at the Berry Center. The event was organized by the Community Programs Department in partnership with the Cy-Fair Houston Chamber of Commerce and was underwritten by Memorial Hermann Cypress. The expo sponsors were Active Life Dentistry, Animal ER of Northwest Houston, Care Now Urgent Care, Cy-Fair Animal Hospital, Cypress-Fairbanks Medical Center Hospital, Houston Methodist Willowbrook Hospital, MD Anderson Cancer Center, North Cypress Medical Center, T-Mobile, and Texas Children's Hospital. Nearly 5,000 visitors came out to the Berry Center on October 9th and 10th for the 24th Annual CFISD College Night. Hosted by the Guidance and Counseling Department, College Night exposes students and parents to more than 200 colleges and universities, technical and specialty schools, and military representatives. More than 600 middle and high school students and parents learned about career and technical programs and industry certification opportunities at the 5th Annual Career Options Fair. The collaborative event, held on October 24th at the Berry Center, was presented by the district's career and technical education coordinators and college and career specialists. On October 25th, Cypress-Fairbanks ISD welcomed more than 100 business partners and community members, including elected officials, to see public education in action during the second School Priority Day. Guests were welcomed at the Berry Center and then transported via school bus to one of 3 high schools to take student-led tours of school buildings and observe different subjects and programs. I'd like to remind the community that schools will be closed the week of November 19th through 23rd for the Thanksgiving holidays. Some of our support facilities, including the Instructional Support Center, will also be closed. I'd like to wish all of our students and employees a relaxing and safe holiday as we take time to be thankful for the many freedoms and blessings we enjoy in this country. And then one more thing, finally, we'd like to wish Roy Sprague a happy 60th birthday today. We appreciate Roy's long time employment in this district and the difference he's made. In fact, just as a reminder, he was one of the 75 most influential people in the history of Cy-Fair ISD. How long you been in the district, Roy? 22nd year now. It's his 22nd year, so he was in his 30s when he came to work here. So just as a, and I bet you had brown hair too, didn't you? Okay, all right. Happy birthday, Roy.
Well, and don't forget the beatdown he put on Stewart at that tournament, that Skinner tournament. But that's probably not legal in several states. What he did to you.
Getting a little personal. Hey, this coming and attending. Our meeting is now adjourned.